Chapter 4, Shifting Towards What Matters. I love the quote by James Clear: "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." I love it because we can have the best intentions, the most challenging goals, but if we don't create systems to support us achieving those goals, we are going exactly nowhere. It's like each year when hundreds of thousands of people set New Year's resolutions to do one new thing or another, sprint out of the starting blocks on the 1st of January, and come 1 February, those resolutions are long forgotten. This process of goal setting does not allow follow through. It does not set us up for success. I've learned the hard way, as I'm sure many of you have too. I believe in goal setting, and I believe in having something to work towards, but I believe more in small incremental steps in the right direction. It's not about our speed, but the direction in which we are moving. And if we are not moving forward, we're not standing still, we're actually moving backwards. But how do we do this practically? How do we set up our lives in a way that we can get to all the things that matter and give our best to the ones that matter, not just our colleagues and clients? We've got to start with what matters to us most. We cannot be everything to everyone, even though we might go through periods of our lives when we strive for this. It is not a sustainable way of living. So we've got to filter through everything we do and commit to and decide what really matters to us most in this season. What matters? We all have balls in the air. Some are glass and some are not. When glass balls fall, they crack, sometimes shatter, and take some time to rebuild. Rubber balls bounce back. They recover position quite quickly without much damage. We've each got to determine our glass balls, the ones that we really need to avoid dropping. So let's start there. We spoke about values a couple of chapters ago. These are the things we judge to be important in the way we live and work. They are the reasons we act the way we do and a motivation for our decisions. They guide our behaviors. We need to live our lives in a way that is aligned to our values. Otherwise, we find ourselves discontent and unhappy. The things that matter most to us are often aligned to our values. Family, well-being, financial stability, personal growth. All these things matter to me, and I can see solid or dotted lines from these to my values. But how did I figure these out? How do you figure what really matters to you? Well, maybe you should think about who and what makes you happy and fulfilled. Who and what do you want to be surrounded by in 20, 30, 40 years' time? What do you want your life to be like 20, 30, 40 years from now? What do you want to be remembered for one day when you're no longer here? All these questions point towards things that will stand out to be of importance to you. The thing is, these things can change over time, and that's okay. Our priorities shift, our mindsets shift, our circumstances change. All these influence what matters most to us. What we often forget, though, is to actually stop, to re-evaluate what matters. And when we don't know, when we don't stop, we find ourselves spreading ourselves so thin and giving too much to the wrong things, things that do not fill our cups. That again leads to a place where we feel misaligned, discontent, even depressed. I can't emphasize enough how discovering what really matters to you is so crucial for living a life that is intentional and on purpose. I don't know about you, but that's the kind of life I'm after. Time and energy. Another thing we sometimes forget, and mostly only realize when we're at the end of ourselves, is that our time and our energy are actually limited resources. They are not in endless supply. We get a certain amount each day, and at the end of that day, we can't roll over the hours or bank the energy for the next day. What's done is done. There's no getting it back. So from the mindset that these two things are limited, surely we want to maximize our time and our energy on the things that matter most to us, rather than squeezing every last drop of ourselves for all the things that don't and won't matter in 5 minutes from now, 5 months from now, or even 5 years from now. In the time building up to my shift moment described in chapter 1, I was totally overcommitted and became totally overwhelmed. I said yes when I meant no, even when I knew I shouldn't be agreeing to things. I pushed myself beyond myself for too hard and for too long that eventually there was no more energy to give anyone or anything. The sad thing is that I think this happens to more of us than we let on. We don't share our struggles with overcommitment because we find ourselves wanting to please others, meeting their expectations without consideration of our own or of the ones we love most. So, when we are able to define, firstly, what matters to us in this season, and secondly, how we allocate our time and our energy, we slowly start investing in the places that give us the highest return. The places that fill our hearts and our minds. From this place, we can slowly start living into a life that's meant for us according to our story, not the story of someone else. The work-life balance myth. It would be amiss of me to not mention how work falls into all of this. For many of us, our work is an important part of our lives. We spend a lot of time doing the work we choose to do, and it should factor into our structures and the systems we create. The thing is, though, that this thing we hear about all the time, work-life balance, it's a myth. It does not exist. Balance implies equal parts. That means when we talk about work-life balance, what we really mean is that work and life are in equal parts. This is not the case and probably never will be. Life doesn't work like that. We burn ourselves out striving for this balance that can never exist. Rather, what we should be aiming for is a life of harmony. One where you get to decide the things that matter most to you, and then you lean into those things when you need to. Yes, there will be times when work commitments need to take priority. Fine, lean in. Yes, there will be times when our family needs to take priority. Of course, lean in. This way, we create a rhythm for our lives that exists and allows us to move through each day without frantically trying to achieve a balance that can never exist. I remember when my kids were smaller, I still believed in balance. I hustled hard to give everything at work and everything to my family. I became so disappointed and despondent because it just wasn't working out. But it never could. Only later did I learn about creating a harmony to lean into areas of our lives when we need to. This way, we can set ourselves up to thrive rather than beat ourselves up for not spending 5 hours with our family because we spent 5 hours doing work. Another thing about harmony is that we get to create it for ourselves. Each of us has a different tune. We get to write the notes. Lean in here today, lean in there tomorrow. All the while feeling fulfilled because we are spending our time and our energy on the things that matter most to us. Margin. Sometimes we found our calendars filled to the rim. Our days are overflowing with commitments. Our weeks are filled with appointments and deadlines. There is just no space for anything more. This is not the harmony we should be after. The rhythm we should be creating has space. Margin. Margin is the opposite of overload. Margin means we allow space to think, breathe, rest, be grateful. Margin means we intentionally insert buffers of time into our harmony, so when we need to lean in somewhere unexpectedly, there is place to do so. It means that we create sufficient space for work-related tasks, that when there's an emergency and we need to fetch our children early from school, we're not thrown totally off course because we have to step out for an hour. It means that when we create space to go for a run, take a walk, read a book with our children under the tree in our garden, we don't feel we need to constantly look at our phone to check we're not missing out on anything. It means we say no to 2 of the 3 parties so we can spend an afternoon with our families at the pool rather than another sugar overload that no one really needs or wants. Margin means we create a space between our load and our limit. Creating margin means we live away from the edge rather than on it. Routines. Routines root us. If you think that routines aren't for you, let's have a chat. I believe all of us thrive on routines and create structure and boundaries for how we live our lives. We learn from a very early age, as babies even, how routines set up our days. In fact, our brains actually strive to take everything we do regularly and turn them into routines, because thinking is hard work. My routine is spread over 5 areas of my day: early morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Key practices that help me set up and wind down my days are done in the early morning and nighttime routines. These are things like quiet time or meditation, exercise, setting intentions, drinking a full glass of water, practicing gratitude, and putting away my phone. Effective routines are systems that we set up to help fit in all the things that matter to us most. Effective routines reduce stress, improve mental and emotional well-being, and help us manage our precious energy and time. If you are a person who has more energy and focus in the mornings, and then your routines should allow you to get to high focus tasks in the earlier parts of the day. I'm this type of person. I do work that requires more of my focus and concentration earlier in the day, and then low energy tasks later. It takes a lot for me to focus properly on high concentration tasks later in the day, and will most definitely take me longer when it's after 4 p.m. Some of you are probably thinking that you only start your days at 10 a.m. after 4 cups of coffee when you really start functioning. That's fine. Go with it then. Structure your routines so that you do low energy, low concentration tasks early in the day and high concentration, high focus tasks later. You've got to be self-aware, understand what works for you, and then build your routines and rhythms around that. It's the only way that you'll get the most out of your most productive times. Habits. Sometimes we can't break routines to build new, better ones because we're struggling with some bad habits. When the alarm goes off in the morning to get up for your quiet time and a workout, you find yourself pressing snooze 5 times and missing the hour you wished you'd had. When you're onto your 3rd episode of your favorite show at night and then start snacking on whatever you can find in the fridge when you've had a full wholesome meal. When you get into bed early with the intention of going to sleep and then spend an hour scrolling mindlessly through social media. These are all bad habits that we're familiar with. Habits are things we repeatedly do, mostly without thinking about them. One of the things with habits is that to break a bad habit that no longer serves you, we can attach a better habit to it or in place of it. So when you get into bed early, read a good book that actually gets your full attention before you even pick up your phone to start scrolling. Instead of pressing snooze endlessly, get up as soon as the alarm goes off. Get your head in the game for your day and do the workout. You'll start feeling and seeing the benefits as soon as you start doing this consistently. Again, it takes some self-awareness to know where you are falling short and what needs to change, and then some discipline to make the shift. But knowing what matters to you, where you're wanting to head to, and creating the systems to help you get there are all help to shift your habits in the right direction. The other thing about habits is that we can think of habits in the way of the type of person we want to be. If we want to be someone who is well and healthy, then what habits does a well and healthy person have? If we want to be someone who has a morning routine, then what habits does that person need? This makes it easier to build in the new habits we need to become the people we want to be and live the lives that we want to live. When we shift our daily habits, we can quite literally shift our lives. It sounds worth it to me. Consistency. With all these things I've spoken about here, we need consistency to actually affect lasting change. We can't do 1 or 2 things differently every now and again and expect to see big shifts. That won't ever work. We need to consistently shift towards what matters to us by intentionally choosing to build the systems and routines, create the habits, invest our time and our energy wisely, and write the harmony we are after. John Maxwell famously says, Consistency compounds, and it's so true. When we keep coming back to the building blocks and do them again and again, the benefit compounds over time. When we're consistent rather than extreme, we actively and sustainably start moving in that direction we want to go. Perfection over progress. We spoke in the previous chapter about perfectionism and how it breaks down how we feel about ourselves and others. Perfect is something that we shouldn't be after and should not form part of our lives if what we're aiming for is fulfillment and joy. These quotes from Brené Brown sum it up so well. Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving for your best. And perfectionism is the 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact, it's the exact thing that's really preventing us from being seen and taking flight. Rather than aiming for perfect, how about we aim for progress? Small, incremental steps that shift us towards what matters to us. Small shifts in the direction that takes us in the way on the life that we're trying to build.